Okay, thank you for tuning into Stampscaping 101. This is a stamp image that I haven't used in quite some time. It's the Canyon. And the Canyon is one of those designs that were in my first catalog, and I discontinued some stamps, and I'll kind of go into the reasons why in this video, but I haven't stamped it for a long time, and said I was going to re-release it, a few months ago, and I just got around to kind of adding the code into the website last night. But I thought I would stamp it out. I've always had some kind of different ideas on how to do it, but like I said, I haven't used it in quite some time. I've seen some amazing examples with this one, kind of over the years, and I don't know. This one right here, I wanted to kind of play around with some of this light kind of just pouring through here and, kind of bouncing off canyon walls and whatnot. And I have this kind of overlook ledge right here. For this little figure, a horse and a dog. But just, I don't know. This is the perfect opportunity for, like, foreground objects, because, I don't know, I love looking at kind of scenic overlooks, okay? And it's the perfect part for location for figures should you want to include them in there. This is a great place, for like soaring kind of eagles or something like that, kind of jumping off their perch, and how kind of birds catch thermals, coming out of the hot air. Thermals coming out of the canyon floor or something like that would be kind of cool too. So I don't know, there's all kinds of possibilities here, but I went with a warm light on this one, using some different warm tones in the form of some distress inks and a couple Marvy ones in the brown tones. This is one of my favorite color schemes. I tend to always, there's a predominant amount of my scenes that kind of go cool, but I do love the warmer temperature scenes as well, and they're of course perfect for things like sunsets. Alright, so if you choose to watch the video, I hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, drop me a note in the comments section. Okay, my old design, Canyon Large. Cutting it out from just a raw cut die. Always cut as close as you can, but don't undercut any part of the image if you can avoid it. Okay? So, when I am cutting something out, I usually go pretty close because I figured, if you just cut it close to begin with, there'll never be kind of an incident of getting it over stamping or something like that when you stamp it out. If there's a little bit of a ridge or something that sticks out there, it has the potential of inking up. And then, when stamping it out, although you're supposed to keep stamps nice and flat, it could tilt a little bit, and then you get that over stamping. Not too big of a deal when it comes to scenic stamping, but I just assume I'd have it there. Okay, so this design was created back in my original lineup, but I discontinued it at some point in time. It had a different kind of perspective, and of course it's looking down over something. Now most of the images that I have, they're more kind of from the vantage point of looking at something straight on, typical eye level. Okay, and with this stamp right here, I didn't have too many things to go on the side of it. I had this other stamp called Tree Lined Hills, but I wanted everything to integrate more, and this is when scenic stamping was really new. Back in the when we're talking about the early 90s to mid 90s, so there were people that just they might be trying to use this stamp right here with, I don't know, Lakeside Cove or something like that, if you're familiar with the line. And I just assumed just discontinue it and kind of have everything integrate, as opposed to kind of just having, a little bit more of an isolated image. Not that this one, you can use this with other things, but that was my general concept of kind of the discontinuing of it. All right. So that being said, I don't know. People did it in samples and whatnot. Then when we started having the online gallery section on the website a few years later, a lot of people saw samples using this stamp in the gallery or whatnot, and then a lot of people wanted it. Okay, now I removed a lot of the ink right there. Okay, because I'm going to have some kind of like light streaming through the canyon, like you see in some canyons, the light kind of creeping in and bouncing off the walls and kind of creating this reflected light within that given space. One of the things that's nice about kind of enclosed spaces is the lighting that's created by reflected light kind of bouncing around. Kind of a side thing, comment, that's why I like going through slot canyons. I love the lighting in slot canyons. Slot canyons are very narrow canyons, not something that, are hundreds of yards, wide, but they're very narrow, like a little slot, okay? But in larger canyons, too, you get that kind of reflected light bouncing around out there, and beautiful Yosemite Valley, places like that. Okay, so we have this canyon situation right here. I'm going to create an overlook. Now, if I stamped it lower, it would just, go off the edge of the page or something like that. I like to have something where, this is interesting. I was thinking about matching that up, but I was thinking, what if I put some clouds right in front? Well, I don't know, maybe that could be an option for another time. But, that'd be interesting. Kind of a cloudy canyon floor. It would give us a kind of a sense of elevation when you do that. I'll do that another time. Okay, this is the ledge that I'm putting here. Kind of the same, ideas, the same type of, stone on the other side. Looking around the canyon floor there. Alright, I have this little space right here. Oops, I inked up this side. Ink up this side. Do you think I'd kind of think in reverse at this point in time? Okay, I have something like that. Alright. And I'll put something up here. Not sure what. That's the beauty of stamping. You just you can kind of conceive of things as far in advance as you want. But you can kind of just create and, let's see, I wonder if I should, you can create an, I don't know, improvise as you go along. Okay, let's see. Let's do this. I still have a lot of options here, but I was thinking about maybe a sunsetty, warm, tinged scene. Perhaps. Alright, let's try this. Let's go with the brown. This is one of my favorite color schemes right here. I bet you I have a bunch of blue on this right now. I would ink this up and there'd probably be a bunch of blue in this cloud here. I think I just used it yesterday and didn't clean it off. I don't know what color was on there. Looks almost green. Why, I don't know. Okay, so this is the cloud cumulus. I have so many different examples of usage of this, but right around the perimeter here, right in here, I'm going to wipe that off. Because of the way I'm using it on this particular scene, you don't have to do this with every scene, but I'm going to have this light kind of streaming in, through the valley. So I just wiped out around the edges right here, and especially right around here, because if the light is coming from within, okay, it would stand to reason there's not going to be this kind of darker tinge around that. Which is there for a reason, but I just don't need it on this particular scene that I'm working on. Okay, now coming out here, I'm going to be farther away from that light, so I don't need to mask, or kind of wipe that area off. Okay, so Lighten this off right here. Okay, so it's really light right here. The billows are top lit right here, so if these clouds are going to be over the light, then the light is bottom lit. So I'm turning, rotating that cloud around like so. You see? Now it's kind of light right there. Alright. I could possibly go for a second impression, but I'm not sure exactly, the configuration where I stamped it out, So I am re-inking with each impression. Because see, if I go once here, all this ink has been removed here, but it's full ink right here. So if I turned around and went for another impression, if this is partly inked right here, it's going to give me a light, dark kind of split in that impression. So it's just better just to re-ink, and you know exactly where your ink is and how much of it. Okay, so we have that little hole of light right there, and that will be the light streaming through there, in theory. But I think it'll work out. I love hiking up to different types of summits, and they call it bagging the peak, putting that peak in your bag, in terms of accomplishment or whatever, off your list of peaks that you're doing. So maybe it took all day to hike up here, and then we're watching the sunset. Maybe you're backpacked up there where you don't have to go down, otherwise you're gonna have to go down the hot hill in darkness. Okay, so we have that. Let me pick out some colors here. Let's go for some warm tones, okay? So I'm going to pick out some kind of those earthy warm tones in the form of like a Distress Ink walnut, those brownish tones, okay? Get a nice range of them. This is light, and this one is, it's medium dark. It looks really dark there on the edges, but it's really not that dark. As far as I know, I don't know if it gets built up, maybe. Here's a mustard seed. You can go with like an ochre type of color. I'm just looking across my table, and I'm just kind of grabbing anything that, kind of would be in that spirit. Okay, so we'll have some nice warm light in Yosemite. There's that waterfall. Don't quote me on this one, but which one is it? It has that period of the day that's, where that golden light's hitting. It looks like gold, kind of coming off of those rocks, from certain angles. I think if it's backlit, it has that golden light. Really quite spectacular. That I have seen in things like videos and things like that. I haven't seen it in person. Okay, so let's start off with the tea dye here. All right, it's kind of a warm, not too bright. When I say not too bright, that's not a bad thing. Okay, we want a nice spectrum of intensity, if we can. Not in every scene, but in theory, the kind of the wider spectrum you have, the wider range of things like value and intensity. Intensity is the relative brightness of in terms of talking about color. That's the relative brightness of a certain color. Bright, dull. Bright not to be mistaken with light. Light is the relative kind of light, dark. Bright is the relative bright, dull, like intense. Okay. So I'm kind of putting, see these walls of the canyon? I've created shadows within that design, and I am reiterating those shadows with additional ink. Okay, so all you have to do is look at a design. If it's lighter in a certain area and darker in another, I would just tend to, you know, retain a lot of that lighting scheme and to just follow suit with a little bit more ink, like so. And then you'll have some nice rounded dimensional forms created that way. There are certainly exceptions, like if I put the light on this side, you know, maybe the shadows would be a little bit different, but you can pretty much just follow the designs. If your designs have volumes and shade in them, volumes and lighting, okay? Some volumes are created with a little bit more of the kind of the form in mind, but then there's shadows that are supposed to be about kind of lighting. You know, a lot of times they're the same thing, but not always. Some designs are more outlines, you know, more like a coloring book or something like that, and then, you know, it's really more of for you to interpret and to kind of create. You know, it puts the onus on the individual, the stamper, to kind of create that lighting within the design. I try to take out most of that type of kind of start so that people can focus more on things like technique and emotion and composition and stuff like that, without the tedium of you know, kind of inventing everything. Okay, let's see here. So kind of lighting starting to develop. I've left some areas light within here, you know, kind of create some lighting on my ledge here too, just by the retention of some of the white of the paper. Okay, so that is tea-dye. I think that's enough for that one. It's a base layer, foundation layer, but it kind of establishes the lighting within the scene. I tell you, after doing that 11 by 17, these little tiny normal-sized cards seem to go so fast. Everything's relative, isn't it? If you don't drive very far, kind of on a daily or weekly or whatever basis, you know, kind of the distance of going, I don't know, the notion of driving 100 miles is a lot, but suddenly you take a drive that's, you know, a 2-day drive or 3-day drive, and all of a sudden, you know, driving somewhere for like 8 hours seems relatively close. Okay, so adding this down, adding this kind of roughly in the same areas that I did with the previous color, being a little bit more, you know, slightly more selective, but not too much. Still adding a pretty decent amount down. I'm going to add in some special effects into this scene, which I hope you like, with the pigment ink, and well, mostly with the pigment ink. We'll see how that goes. You know, I'm looking forward to adding that kind of that diffusion of light within that space. It's one of the things that is really cool. I mean, I added in all my scenes anyway, but things that are kind of really distant, those kind of foggy techniques really are maybe even more effective, you know, being that you have distance. You know, like if you're standing in the middle of a cloud, it just looks foggy out, but you stand a mile away from it, 10 miles, 5 miles away, and you can see kind of the formation of that cloud, you know, and what you're looking at. But you drive into it, and you don't even realize you're driving into it. It's not like, you know, hitting like a real opaque, you know, definitive transition into it. So anyways, doing things, you know, kind of that are more distant, you know, maybe gives you a little bit more opportunity for, you know, perhaps some different types of looks. Okay, we're adding in mustard seed. Very warm tone, really yellow. It's just probably more of a slight aged looking yellow, I'm guessing, you know, I mean, it's in the kind of this distress line of tones. Okay. Alright, I'm going to get some of this yellow across in that water. Some people use that as a road too, and no reason it can't be. It could be a windy road through a canyon. Okay, alright. What a beautiful glow now. It's like a, I don't know, is it sunset or sunrise? I tend to see it more as sunset, being that I'm not up early enough to see a lot of sunrises. And I don't know, I am sometimes, but I usually don't go out somewhere where I can see the sunrise. I can see the sunset from where I am, but I'm looking west, but I don't have like an eastern view of that peeking over whatever local mountains around here. Alright, so this is really starting to warm up and kind of glow when you have analogous colors next to each other. I don't know if brown's really analogous to yellow, but when you get those transitioning tones like that, you create this color glow, especially when you're working. Did I use the walnut stone yet? Yeah, if I did, it's showing up a little bit more. But when you do this kind of transitioning thing, kind of the farther out from the center that you go, the darker or the less ink I apply. So the darker tones are kind of more perimeter oriented, and the lighter ones go into the scene more. That way you get this kind of transition of values going from light to dark, dark to light, which means just take your darker tones and leave them out here more. So it looks like this transitioning value range, and that's where a lot of the, you know, this idea of kind of light coming from within comes from. Because it's lighter simply in the middle, usually somewhere. Somewhere in the center. It doesn't have to be exact middle, you know, or absolute mid. Okay, putting some more of these kind of streaky tones across some of that river. Alright, let's go on this rock right here. You don't have to do these kind of more monochromatic ones. I tend to, you know, if I'm going with some kind of color scheme, to me, the color scheme and the lighting scheme, etc., that's a lot of, you know, where I see the emotion of a scene coming from. The images themselves can, you know, convey a certain type of emotion inherently, but it's really when you apply that, you know, kind of the specifics in terms of your lighting and whatnot. And certainly color can do that. You know, it can kind of give you a mood or feeling. And that's what I want. Kind of the range of designs to do. People probably think I'm a kind of a visual person, and I am to a degree, but my dominant sense is kinesthetic. So when I do these designs, I have to make them visually kind of competent enough, if that's the word, to kind of get beyond certain types of visual structuring. And if you are able to do that, and it's really hard. Sometimes it's really a struggle when you're designing stamps. But if you don't get through it, I don't think compositions can look good visually and compositionally, but they won't have a certain mood to them. You know, you want your scenes to kind of convey a certain type of emotion that you're going for, and that's where expression comes in mind. Otherwise, things are just kind of logical, you know. And I think kind of the creative process, you know, we're going for a certain type of emotion, or, you know, it's expression. So that, you know, it's kind of coming around. It's, to me, you kind of want to feel, if you're going for a sunset-y type of thing, you want to kind of look at it and kind of on a subconscious level maybe feel a little bit of that warmth or something like that. So this would be a kind of a good type of scene. You'd stamp it out. Let's say someone is, I don't know, someone is having a particularly long winter or something like that, and you send them a card with, you know, kind of a warm tinge to it, you know, so that when they kind of open your card, you know, and pull it out, or envelope, and pull it out, you know what I mean? There's a certain type of kind of visceral kinesthetic resonance that they might kind of experience on a conscious or subconscious level, mostly subconscious, I guess. Anyways, this is why I did a couple videos recently with no talking. I tend to, it's like train of thought here, doing these types of videos. Kind of anything and everything comes out. Okay, so, alright, so there are different types of textures within this ledge stamp, and what I'm doing is I'm going in and reiterating that. So I'm kind of giving it a little bit more dimension, right? We don't have to treat it as one whole. I do in general, but then when I get into usually my darker tones, I can kind of treat each segment a little bit differently, you know, to convey that sense of geology where, you know, different layers of rock can have a different look to them due to the, you know, the makeup of that particular layer of rock. I wish I knew more about geology, or was a geologist with some of the places that I go. Especially in the California desert, when you're really aware of kind of the geology of a given terrain. Alright, so the darker you go in some areas, you know, the lightest area will seem by contrast, not that you have to have everything super, you know, contrasty and, you know, full ranged. For example, you can do something that's more kind of pastel and light, and those have a certain type of, you know, feeling too. Okay, there we go. That looks pretty good as far as our lighting goes, I think. Now, I stamped out everything in black, right? So let's go into black and really add on some of this value, darker value, into the perimeter of the scene. And because it is the same color that we stamped out our objects in, it will thus tie everything together if you kind of use it well, not uniformly, but consistently throughout the different objects in the scene, but more importantly, the different kind of areas of your piece. So right up here, I'm just using it on the upper right and left corner, again for that kind of vignette type of feel. And then just adding some down in this rock down below. What you do is you give your rocks and objects a little bit more opacity by adding some tone down into them. Doesn't mean you have to darken up everything, you know, completely or anything like that. But generally adding that same value, it will unify things, all the different elements, a little bit more than they would have been had you not added that in there. Okay? So no, you don't have to go this dark, you know, by any means, but you certainly can for whatever reason. It doesn't have to be for any particular reason either. You could be just that, you know, you want to frame things. Or frame off the scene in general. Alright. So there we have that. Alright. Now here's what I'm going to do. We have all these trees down there. Right? And we can see trees on the distant plateau up here, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing with a larger tree. Okay, we'll use scale to bring a unifying shape to the composition. And I think, let's see, I can go with this one right up here. Trees. Maybe we'll go like this. Alright. Now sometimes I've been stamping out with black, a lot of times, until recently. I started using my VersaFine a little bit more. And I think that could potentially look really good. Oh, but before I do the VersaFine, I'm going to have to... VersaFine's a really dark pigment ink. I have to add in my kind of special effects things first, in the form of I'm looking for them, my Q-tips here. Q-tips and Hero Arts Unicorn White pigment ink. First, kind of fray your cotton swab, smash it down a little bit. It's nice and loose, okay? Alright, so it's a little bit looser than kind of not. See, this one's a little bit more tightly bound, and this one's, you know, a little bit looser. So I've kind of unraveled the fibers a little bit, okay? I'm going for a soft applicator, or a soft application of this medium. Alright? So in order to apply something softly, you know, you don't want to use a hard tip to do that with, okay? So I've rolled some of this into my ink, and I've kind of gotten it on some of the sides, but see, that's way too much ink right there. It's leaving me too definitive of a glob of paint, okay? And I know your pads out there are probably pretty juicy like mine are. We don't use, I don't know, people don't use pigment inks, I don't think, too much, you know, where they got a bunch of dry pigment ink pads on there, you know. They're re-inking all the time. I don't know. Maybe you are. Maybe you embossed, I don't know, 50 of your Christmas cards or something like that. Or sent out invitations, and, you know, and you're just, you know, embossing all the time. But, okay, so, anyways, on that point, sorry. What I'm doing, see now, when I hit that right there, it's barely visible, where the, you know, right here it was a big glob, okay? So that's what you want right there. All right, so let's take a look and see how it's going to come into play in this scene. Okay, kind of adding this tone right around in my lighter areas. Remember how I kind of wiped off some of that image, the canyon, inherently to begin with, so it's stamped out lighter up here. It's because I was planning on bringing in some of this. All right, let me get some more ink here. This one I tapped off so much that it dried. Okay, I'm just going to take some in here, blot it off a little bit. And I completely forgot what I was saying, but anyways, what I did was I dried off that area of the canyon because I had a lighting idea on what I wanted to do, kind of through this canyon right here. So, just to give me a little bit of a head start, I just made this area up here lighter to begin with. See, now I kind of go over that a little bit with some more tone, but look at that light kind of reflecting off that distant area, and the distant area, is coming through all the moisture in the air to where we're standing, so it's getting broken up, that the imagery back there, it's bouncing off and reflecting back in our eyes, so it just looks lighter. In other words, things that are very distant are often, unless your air quality is super, super clear, it's going to be lighter in the distance than other similar things are darker in value that are closer. Unless there's just like a fluke, cloud right in front of you or something like that. But I'm talking about just a normal, normal visuals. All right, so let's add. See, I have a little bit too much ink on this right here. I wanted to add in maybe some clouds down here. Coming from the water, perhaps. Okay, so kind of that haze coming through, it's kind of being illuminated back in here. Maybe alongside this bank right here, there's some kind of illumination of moisture, fog, whatever, in that space as well. Okay, so see that? Isn't that kind of fun? Maybe this area is kind of more in shadow, where this area is kind of reflecting more of that light. Perhaps. Okay, maybe we're coming around the corner where things aren't being so illuminated. Right around in here. This isn't a formula. You can kind of do whatever you want, and how much. I'm just kind of trying to keep things from being too similar or the exact same from, all throughout the piece. I want some on and some off, some fog on and off. That's why I just don't tone out this whole thing like that. Okay. That is so much fun. I love this this passage down here. It's been a while since I used this image. So I'm kind of applying some techniques to it that I just haven't done before, or haven't done for a long time. It's been a really long time. Alright. Some beautiful light pouring in through the valley floor. Okay. I don't know if I could do that all day, but I think I can. I just love that look there because it adds that kind of that kinesthetic, kind of element in the thing, when you're walking through, fog or something like that, or you're at the beach or, anything like that. A cold kind of winter's day, you can feel that moisture. I don't want to feel freezing cold, like Chicago, but you can stamp it out without, being out in that. But it's that kind of that space in between the objects that's more apparent. I'm looking for my versifying pad. All right, so here's my tree. And by the way, I love Illinois. Nothing against Chicago. Been out there a few times. A lot of great stampers out in that area, for sure. I'm just a wimp in terms of, minus degrees. We're not built for it out here in Southern Cal. Okay. Alright, so here's these trees here. See that? Okay. And I could do that here too, but I was thinking about doing some on the other side of this ledge. Like right over there. I don't know, I could do both. I could have some down here in the foreground, some behind this ledge. Let's go with the Marvy up here. And then, if I want to, I'll use the versifying in the foreground. We'll see how it goes. Okay, I'm putting a little bit of extra pressure around my mask, even though paper towel is relatively thin. It can still kind of create a little bit of that barrier, between masked object and imprinted, kind of overstamping that image. So there we have that right there. Okay, and let's go for a darker one right down here. Let's go with the same stamp. Let's just stamp a kind of a larger portion of it. We'll go high right up here. Okay, so you can create that extra layering right there. See that? So it creates that nice depth within that space. Okay, now I was thinking about an image to use in here. I was thinking about this horseman dog element. Yeah, let me do it on this side. All right, let's put them down there. And it's kind of, it's Father's Day around the corner coming up. And this is some guy and his dog, horse. Kind of I don't know what they're doing. They could just be enjoying time in the outdoors, or they could be coming back from working, I don't know. Okay, see right here? I mean, that's a heck of a view they have. If they are at work, their office has a $1 million view. Better than the corner office, by far. Okay. All right, let's have some fun here. The whole thing's fun, but these are some of those extra little touches, okay? White Uniball Signo gel pen, okay? We have this white light in here. Clouds above the light are bottom lit with a few little dots, okay? Just little highlights. A few little dots can go a long way at times, especially if they are added to a darker area object. I'm generally adding it more to kind of a light to medium lit area, okay? Theory is that you probably wouldn't have too many highlights on something if it's in the dark, right? Because if it's in the dark, that means there's no light in that area. Okay, so always kind of have your highlights on the sides of the object facing the light. So bottom lit clouds, left below, clouds are eliminated here. Okay, and these billows over here are being illuminated on that side of the cloud, okay? Yeah, that one really stands out a little bit too much here. Kind of dampen it off a little bit so it's not so strong. Okay, so shadows in the shadow area of these ridges, right? Why not illuminate the lit areas, okay? Darken the shadows, highlight the lighter areas, okay? You don't really see too much around these ridges, but this one really kind of stands out, doesn't it? Just with a few little dots, on the side. Now, where would you light this one? Right on this side? Or right over here? Well, this side is to the... it's almost directly underneath, but it's kind of leaning towards the left side of the sun, right? Or that opening. So, I will light this side a little bit, highlight a little bit, okay? These trees right here. Let me see if I can get one closer for you. Let's put a few little highlights on the sides of those trees, kind of facing that light like that. I mean, you don't have to keep everything like perfectly like left side illuminated, you know, to the right of the sun and right side illuminated to the left, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be exact. I mean, just put a few little dots like this, you know, wherever. It just kind of catches the light, you know, just slightly like that. Okay. It looks kind of weird. You have to kind of do it, you know, pretty consistently to keep that, you know, so you're saying that that is illumination, you know, coming from, you know, some kind of light source. Okay, so I gotta put some over here, like that. Kind of stands out, but this is what it looks like, you know, at arm's distance, you know, where people would be kind of looking at it. Okay, so we have areas on our ledge, right? Light is coming from up there. See this little rocky area right here? So I can just kind of put a little highlights on the tops of some of these, so that kind of that edge facing the light is now illuminated. And it's drawn right into the design too, so you know, there's just certain areas. See this right here? See this was where this is dark and this is light, right? And it goes dark, light, dark, light. This little area is lit. Not if I toned it out and it's real dark, but if I've retained some areas on here, you know, the lightness of it, I can just go in and reiterate it with a few little dots, just as I would reiterate shading with a little bit more darkness. Okay, now this is your water down here, right? Like a river. Put a little, you know, shimmering, specular light. Touches on there. You know, little dots, perhaps. Could be white caps of, you know, water running. Something of that sort. All right, so oh, let me try something here. Wink of Stella, right? Wouldn't that be perfect down in that water? This one, I bought a gold, and then I have the clear as well. Let's just use the clear right here. I don't know, although this would be a perfect spot for the gold too, but oh, I don't know. Okay, I'll shake them both up. Maybe we'll use them both. I don't know. That's such a small little area down there. Okay, let's see. Yeah. Why not? The gold here is a little bit darker than the gold down that I colored down there, so it looks kind of weird. But with the clear one, I'll just kind of spread that around a little bit. So it'll be some kind of fusion between gold and clear, I would think. Yeah, this spreads it around really nicely. It's like a wink of Stella. You know, when you're going with a gold, you know, or a clear like this, it's almost like a blending brush. Or blending pen, whatever, you know, that we're used to using in other mediums. Okay, let's see if we can see anything at all. Yeah, a little bit. Okay, so we go like that with that river. And I don't know, I'm trying to catch that right up here. I can see it. Yeah, okay, there. I don't know if you can see it there. See, it's kind of illuminating slightly. I can see it from where I am. I can see that little kind of subtle glitter effect. Yeah, let me add some additional touches here. I can barely see it. Okay, this is a gold gel pen. I'll add some kind of gold gel in here too. Little sparkles. This is one of the parts that are kind of hard. It's definitely hard, you know, if you scan something, you can't show like that glitter, but this is a little bit better. But okay, there's all those little dots. That's the gold gel pen. I mean, you can't see it. It's not like, okay, we got all these gold balls everywhere or something like that. But you know, if you kind of catch the light, you know, it kind of comes alive in there. All right. So anyways, there you have it. That canyon is really fun. Especially, I love that light coming through there and kind of the different possibilities. Can you imagine a moon up here or something like that, and this kind of valley down here, kind of, you know, with a blanket of, you know, fog coming through or something like that? All right. Not to jump ahead too far, but maybe that'll be the next time I do that. All right, but the sunset kind of creeping through there isn't bad either. A lot of fun to do. Kind of center your thing, and I just darkened in the areas around it. You could potentially use, you know, a little bit of this side of the canyon, you know, to fill out over here like that. And you can use this this side right here, a little bit. See that pillar? If you want to fill out, you know, additional space. I don't know if I'd have, you know what I mean? Probably wouldn't want to have two, you know what I mean, canyons so symmetrical like that. I guess it can happen out there in nature or something like that. But that would probably be a little bit too much, you know, similarity between the two. But you can certainly use parts of one side for the other and build out space to each side. Okay, so anyways, I hope you enjoyed the scene. Thanks for checking out the video, and if you have any questions, drop me a note in the comments section. If you like this video, feel free to like, subscribe, and share.